I want to wish everyone a good morning. It's good to see everyone. And I'd like to call the meeting of the January 27th, 2022 Academic Affairs and Educational Attainment Committee to order. Please remember that only members of the committee can provide a second to a motion today, regents. Of course, any regent can comment or ask a question along the way, which we all do. This is a hybrid meeting, so a reminder to participants to speak very clearly or as clearly as you can with the mask on and speak into the microphone so that those who are working remotely can hear us. We are live streaming this meeting as a public meeting. It is available on YouTube at the ABOR Live link, and that information is also available on the Arizona Board of Regents website. We have a very full agenda, as all of you know, starting with an initial discussion of NAU's proposal for revision or exception to ABOR's undergraduate admission policy. The committee will be asked to discuss this and approve several university metric targets as we go through the day. We'll hear requests from all three universities pertaining to new programs. The committee will then review and discuss two reports, the first-time student retention report and the fiscal year 2021 financial aid report. And let me pause right there because I appreciate how much effort everyone has put into those two reports. It takes effort, obviously, on the part of the ABOR staff, but it takes considerable effort at the three universities to provide the data so that the board has a chance to really see the results of what we're doing at the universities. Finally, today, we'll end with a discussion of ASU's and Northern Arizona University's teacher qualification programs that are designed to qualify teachers so that they can teach dual enrollment courses given the change by the Higher Learning Commission. So let's begin with consideration and approval of the minutes from the November 4th, 2021 meeting. Do we have any corrections, changes, or comments about those minutes? Hearing none, I move that the committee approve the minutes from the November 4th, 2021 Academic Affairs and Educational Attainment Committee meeting. Is there a second?
Second.
All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Any abstentions? The motion passes. Item 2 on our agenda today is Northern Arizona's discussion of its proposed revision or exemption from ABOR policy 2-121, undergraduate admissions. And Provost Quilesi, are you going to do this? Is Annika going to do this? Or
Annika will do that.
Annika? Then Annika, the floor is yours, so to speak, digitally here.
Thank you, Regent Penley. I'm actually going to turn it over to President Cruz Rivera to kick us off.
Okay, thank you, Annika. President Cruz Rivera.
Thank you, Regent Penley. As NAU sharpens its focus on broadening participation, increasing completion rates, and enhancing postgraduate outcomes to advance the attainment goals and propel the prosperity of our students throughout the state, we ask the board to consider revisions to ABOR Policy 2-121 to align our admission standards with our mission-driven imperative. Through the work with the board since beginning our 17th presidency and important initiatives underway with the strategic roadmap process at NAU, our university seeks to take up the mantle of providing access, workforce development, and clear, attainable pathways for students throughout our state to gain a post-secondary credential, particularly in rural and underserved communities and among time and place-bound student populations. We do so through a range of efforts, including the programmatic investments that we will be discussing later this afternoon in our use of TRIF funding, designed to complement other existing resources and emerging funding opportunities available to the university. As you know, the economy of the state of Arizona is booming and projected employment opportunities in high-wage, high-demand fields are glowing. but without bold intervention, many Arizona residents will be left behind. Because even as Arizona is among the top in the nation in economic growth, it is at or near the bottom in educational attainment, at a time when nearly 2/3 of all jobs require some form of post-secondary education. The magnitude of the challenge is clear and has been broadly acknowledged by the board and many other public and private entities in our state, including the Greater Phoenix leadership, by dramatically increasing its contributions to the number of Arizona residents with high-quality post-secondary degrees and certificates with market value. NAU will help reduce unemployment and underemployment, increase wages, bolster civic engagement and voter participation, advance equity, and improve physical and mental health while enhancing the social well-being and the economic competitiveness of the state. Just last week, the National Association for College Admission Counseling and the National Association of Student Financial Aid Administrators issued a report that calls for a reimagining of college admissions and financial aid in order to increase and broaden participation in higher education. Vice President Annika Olson will provide a little more information on that later this morning. An essential complementary component to support these efforts is the implementation of a new admissions policy that aligns how we provide access in practice with our stated institutional goals. NAU stands ready to do this hard and important work in partnership with ABOR and our sister institutions. When coupled with our complementary work in financial aid and pricing that will be shared with the board later this spring, and our strategic investments of resources to ensure that we are broadening access while maintaining and even enhancing the quality of our academic programs, we are well positioned to make significant progress on improving Arizona's educational attainment. 4 important points I want to make before I turn it over to my colleague Annika Olson, Vice President for Enrollment Management, who will walk us through how revisions to our admissions policy are an important part of our efforts to ensure that the distinctive excellence of an NAU degree is made available to a larger number and broader group of Arizonans who want to contribute to and deserve to benefit from the economic prosperity of the state. First, with this proposed pilot program, NAU seeks to explore the hypothesis that with clearer messaging, a significant number of students who have worked hard to meet their high school graduation requirements with a 3-point GPA and above will not select out of applying to NAU simply because, through no fault of their own, they may be among the 50,000 students attending the 1 in 5 high schools in Arizona that do not provide on-site access to all 16 core courses currently required by our state's public universities. Second, with this proposed pilot program, NAU seeks to explore the hypothesis that with the right level of advising and student support services, those who are admitted under the proposed admissions requirement will exhibit retention and graduation rates at least at the same level as similarly situated students admitted through the delegated admissions process, with expected gains beyond that as NAU deploys a new program portfolio designed to increase completion and reduce completion gaps. Third, with this proposed pilot program, NAU truly assumes the responsibility of providing access to success. The university is committed to being a nationally recognized engine of opportunity, vehicle of social mobility, and a driver of transformative change through the delivery of equitable post-secondary value as measured not only by successfully graduating our students, but also by the post-college outcomes associated with our graduates. And finally, fourth, there are no unanticipated costs to this proposal pilot, as the potential costs have already been contemplated in our budget forecasting in support of NAU's commitment to inclusive excellence, and will be readily absorbed by the university assuming control of the College Success Program that we have in the past outsourced to one of our community college partners, by the university's designation of 60% of the base TRIF allocation approved by ABOR in November to access and workforce development programs and seed funding for experiential learning opportunities in support of enhancing the quality of our programs and improving the learning outcomes of our students. And finally, by our proposed investments through the amended TRIF Plan for Educational Attainment and Workforce Development, which we will discuss this afternoon. In short, our proposal is not to lower the admission standards, rather to elevate our commitment to better serving the underserved by eliminating barriers that undermine the college-going aspirations of highly talented, diverse students who, with the right level of support, can succeed at NAU and be active and productive participants in our democracy and our economy. I will now turn it over to Vice President Olson.
Thank you, President Cruz Rivera. I'm excited to have this conversation and answer questions about our proposed policy change or exception to policy as outlined. Beginning with the entering class of 2023, and for the following 6 years, we would like to pilot shifting to 14 core requirements, allowing for greater transparency with the Arizona high school graduation requirements. We will be able to clearly share with prospective students and families what those requirements are and that they do align with the high school graduation requirement. While we have the delegated admissions as part of the policy now that allows us to admit students that don't meet all 16 core or the clear 3.0 designation, this policy does not remove those current GPA requirements, and again, allows for us to clearly communicate that if you're a successful student in one of our Arizona high schools and you're on track for graduation, we want you to apply to NAU. As President Cruz Rivera mentioned, the NACAC and NAFSA report that was released last week, it clearly outlines the complexity of applying for admissions and financial aid. I'm pleased to report that at NAU, we've been digging into those two areas in relation to our strategic roadmap and our equitable access to post-secondary education for the last several months. It was nice to see the report. Some of the highlights there, it clearly states to reduce barriers and to concentrate students' admissions criteria on their K-12 work. How we provide access to students is the starting point. Parents' amazing team of dedicated faculty is reimagining how we're doing all of our retention work along with our colleagues in student affairs. And we are confident that beginning this fall, even though the proposal is for fall 23, that we will have some excellent learnings from those reimagining of our college success program, intensive advising, some curricular and co-curricular components in our freshman year seminar, and other supportive programs. We will track these students, which we have done in some forms before, but very specifically for students that come in and don't have those 2 years of second language, we'll be able to identify those. On our Flagstaff campus, only 20% of our majors require college level second language. We are dedicated to having a global student when they leave NAU, and our strong 6th rank international programs help us do some of that. And students that are coming to us that don't have that second language requirement will have the opportunity to work that into their general studies. Many of those students, English is their second language, perhaps. They choose not to take a second language in high school, and they will have the opportunity to test out of that as they always have. We feel that this policy of moving from 16 core to 14 aligns with our access mission. Again, it's a pilot. We'll be tracking these students and be able to offer them the support at entry, understanding what major they're a part of and putting them on a track to succeed. In addition to removing the 2 second language requirements, moving from 16 to 14, is using the 4th year of math that is offered at students' high schools as the 4th year of math for admission. This is a little confusing. All students in the state of Arizona are required to take 4 years of math to graduate high school. Algebra 1, geometry. I know, are we all having flashbacks? Algebra 2, in a fourth year of math. In some instances, that fourth year of math, a typical one is consumer math, that comes up frequently, doesn't meet the ABOR fourth year of math requirement, but does in fact meet the high school graduation requirement. We want to make it clear to students that if they come in with that consumer math and have done well, again, that is short admissions above a 3.0, that even with a math that's not approved by the ABOR curricula, that we will place them in a success program with our Lumberjack Mathematics Center in our peak math performance, just as we always have done. For the fall 21 class, we admitted 23% of the admitted students that chose not to attend NAU had a math deficiency. 5% of those that were in our entering class did have a math deficiency, and they were all, based on their academic program of study, placed in math support if they needed it, if they hadn't tested out or shared an ACT, SAT score with us that was high enough to test them out for their academic area of interest. We will continue to do that through this initiative as well. We are hoping that students, when they enter NAU with their 14 core, feel confident that they will succeed. Sometimes when students they see the 16 core and they might say, oh, I don't have one or two of those, I'm not even gonna bother to apply. And given the challenges we face as a state, NAU is excited to pilot this program with the complementary services of academic support, intensive advising, and the reimagining of our CSP program. The 6-year time span that we are requesting allows us to have some learnings from some of our reimagined programs in fall 22, bring in the first entering class of fall 23 under the 14 core admission criteria, and then track them through the entering class of 28. So we have some deep and long learnings about how those students are performing, allowing us for adjust and shift in some of our new programs coming this fall. Much is often shared with the three institutions and my colleagues, Casey and Kent, to my left, about the perceptions of higher education in the state and around the country. The report shared last week by NACAC and NAFSFA, that's a hard one to say, highlights some of those perceptions. We have a lot of things to contend with as institutions as higher education. Under our new leadership, we are firmly rooted in allowing access and allowing students to succeed. We do not believe that the nearly 20% of students that don't even have access to all 16 core should be any different than those that do. And so we request this pilot program, and I'm more than happy to entertain any questions.
Thank you very much, Annika. We appreciate that. Thank you, President Cruz Rivera, for your presentation. I think most of you know that Andrew Comrie and Jane Kuhn have joined the board staff in roles in academic affairs, with Andrew being the Chief Academic Officer for the board at this point, and Jane Kuhn being the Senior Advisor. I'd just like to call on Andrew and Jane with any additional commentary or information that the board should have as it discusses the proposal from NIU. Andrew, let me begin with you.
Thank you, Regent Penley, and good morning, Regents. I have just 3 or 4 points to give you in context on the NIU's proposal. The first is that the uniform admissions policy that the board has been in place for several decades. Had some changes back in the 80s and before that, but it's been around for a long time. The notion that there are uniform standards across the state, and that any student therefore should, and any high school counselor should know that with a certain performance, you can get into any of the state universities. So this request from NAU, by definition, therefore, is a request to an exception to that. However, I will also say that most states in the region, and certainly all the states with universities that could be considered competitors with NAU for students, the majority of those do not actually have a standard set of admissions in their states across all of their institutions. There tend to be differentiated admissions in most states. In this case, we're talking most of the Western US states. So that's the point of comparison. I also just wanted to make plain that in this request, something that Dr. also mentioned, which is that we have a two-tier admission system. So the one is what's called the shared admissions, which is essentially the right high school GPA, get a B and everything, and it has to be in these 16 core classes. And as you heard, some of those match the high school graduation requirements, and some of them are not quite the same as the high school requirements. So and then what every university does, and all three do this, is they also have a category of delegated admissions, which is to say if students don't have one or maybe even two of those requirements, the universities can decide to admit those students anyway, but it's not assured. It's the university's decision. And in this case, effectively, if I can paraphrase what NAU is asking for, is to essentially make plain to applicants that you don't have to apply to get the delegated admissions, that in fact the de facto admission standard is what is stated. So that's effectively what they're doing. The idea being that there are some students who might apply who don't apply because they see the printed admission standards and don't bother, when in fact they might be able to get in. So that's the essence of the request. And I'll also mention, although I know the provosts are about to speak also, that from what we've heard, the other two universities, neither of them say that they intend to change their admission requirements at this point. So that's my context for you.
Thanks, Andrew. Jane, any other additional comments?
Yeah, I would just like to note that, as Annika mentioned, this is a population that currently is not applying to the institutions because they view the 16 core requirements as stated as an obstacle. So I think the key here is that this is a population of students that we don't have a lot of data on. So there is a bit of a risk in what they're doing. However, with that said, there are, as Annika mentioned, about 50,000 students out there that we know are not able to take the 16 core courses. They're going to schools that don't offer that. And that should not be a barrier to them seeking a higher education. So the pilot program, and I think combined with the roadmap that Dr. Cruz Rivera is putting forward, all fits well with the access and the equity mission that NAU will be pursuing over the next few years. And as they have mentioned, they will be tracking these students. So I think we will be able to watch those outcomes and make any turns or curves necessary as they go through this process.
Thank you very much, Jane. Provost Pugliese.
Karen P.
Karen,
Exactly for that reason.
Karen Pugliese. I'm sorry, Karen.
It's okay.
I'll get it right one
Regent
day.
Penley, thank you. I guess all I will add at this point, and certainly help answer question as I can, is to say that we have, considered this carefully. Given the evidence that we have, we wouldn't want to take a huge risk, to Jane's point about with admitting students that we don't have the confidence that we can support to progress to graduation. We don't have evidence at this time that suggests that we're taking a great risk. There's the uncertainty lies in what are the other characteristics of this population of students that hasn't been applying. That's the way I look at it as a social scientist. And we have great confidence in the work that we can do with these students using the programs that we have in place that support all of our first-year students, but with special focus on those students that we know come to us that may have some academic challenges ahead of them. And maybe I'll add that, I think that confidence speaks to, as our president, was talking about earlier, the fact that we're staking, our success as an institution in the future and our reputation on the kind of impact that we can have on students. And to me, what that means is that we're focused on the development of talent, the development of human potential, and giving these students an opportunity to have the benefits of the programs that we offer and not create a barrier that we don't have good reason to impose. One of the themes of the report that Annika mentioned is, advice to all institutions to reflect carefully on the consequences of the various kinds of barriers or gates that we put up in the way of our admission requirements. And that's in a sense what we've done. And this is what we propose to do on a pilot basis with, all commitment to assessing how it plays out to see if we can in fact serve these students through Northern Arizona University.
Thank you very much, Provost Pugliese. Any comments or questions from members of the board? Regent Ridenhour.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I only had two concerns. One was resources, and I'm sure John and Dr. Cruz have tried to figure out where in the world NAU is going to get the resources. And then my second question is communication, and how early do you start this? In other words, if you're just going to notify the seniors that they may not have been aware that they've dropped out long before they got to that point. And I was thinking about ASU and their Phoenix Union communication and how all that worked out, and I'm not sure. So how do you structure this so you get the communication out quick enough, and also that it does not have any effect on the reputation of NAU?
Great, thank you for that question. The communication, we are planning to do this for the entering class 2023. So those students at all three of our institutions, we all open our applications for admission for that class in July. So this coming July. So we will go far and wide with our high school counselor population in the state and our current prospective students and their parents this spring, should it be approved, and then moving forward. For students that may have opted out from applying from all three in the past, all three of us regularly communicate and try to re-engage those students. We will continue those efforts as well. And the three of us, Casey and Kent, my two counterparts, we met with Helios alongside the AIA just on Monday about the Phoenix Union letter campaign and communication campaign, and strategically expanding that program to include both NAU and U of A alongside our partners here at ASU. That communication may change given this pilot program, definitely, so we'll have to tackle that as that comes, definitely. You're right in saying that students that are heading into their senior year are probably already have a lot of their schedule that's pretty much baked for their senior year. But to the point that many of the students don't have access to all 16 core, those are really the students that we hope to influence as we're moving forward. So those that otherwise wouldn't apply. In terms of reputation, I feel strongly that we aren't changing our admissions requirements. We are allowing more students access that may not have access to all 16 in high school. That 3.0 delegated admission, 3.0 assured admissions and the delegated admissions remain the same. Technically, we could admit all of these students today, and we do admit some of these students that don't have 2 foreign language and don't have that 4th year of math as assigned by ABOR. But it's not clear for students when they look at the 16 core that they understand that they, as a successful high school student, very well could be very successful at NAU or one of the other 2 institutions as well. And so we're hoping to eliminate that and create clarity with the high school graduation requirements and our requirements for admissions under this policy.
Thank you.
Any follow-ups, Regent Ridenour?
No, thank you.
Okay, thanks very much. President Cruz Rivera, additional information?
Just wanted to, the first part of the question was around cost. And just stress that as the university is moving towards this more of an access and equity mission for the people of Arizona, we have already baked in, if you will, in our budget forecasting, the reallocation of existing resources, and even how we're allocating TRIF funding. We have made sure that we are organizing our work in a way that we can support a broader set of students and their needs. In fact, later this afternoon, when we talk about the amended TRIF allocation, we will be presenting areas of investment around broadening participation and increasing graduation rates and reducing gaps that will support programs that will ensure that we serve these students well.
Thanks very much, President Cruz Rivera. I know, I'm sorry, Provost
Karen. Thank you.
Whatever reason, Karen, I can't get it right this morning. Normally I can.
It's okay. No problem. Thank you very much. I just wanted to, I'm not adding anything new so much as putting a fine point on something. And, first on what Annika was saying. To me, this is about transparency and being transparent in terms of communication. I think gives us an opportunity to have an influence on aspirations among high school students. And that's one of the barriers that we face in our effort to increase educational attainment, is to inspire and make clear to students that they have a path to achieve those aspirations for a university degree. And I think this has the potential to really be helpful with that.
Thanks, Provost. President Crow, you had a comment, I believe?
Yeah, just a comment. So I calculated the other day that I've been in Regents meetings for more than 1,600 hours.
I'm not even going to do that.
No joke. And in those 1,600 plus hours of formal meetings, that's not even discussions with Regents. This is among the 5 most important items that has been considered in my 1,600 hours. And I say that I'm very supportive of the proposal and where everything is going. I'm going to recommend to the board, being as supportive as we are, that this is a unique moment in the history of this institution called ABOR to make a very significant correction to an error that was made 4 or 5 or 6 decades ago. And that was that we remain one of the only states in the United States which has only a set standard for admission that's relatively high to the public universities. And so one of the only states that has this. And so this is a huge opportunity, not for, what are you calling it, a pilot. This is a potential transformation. This should be a big deal, a big announcement. This notion of that Northern Arizona University is expanding its mission by altering the admission standards of who can go to college in Arizona. So it's I'm not arguing for or against the details at all, but I just think this, I would hate to miss the opportunity to say this is a technicality, that we're changing these little things and some 12th grader or some high school educated parent is going to be able to figure all this out. This should be a deal. I mean, a big deal. The Arizona Board of Regents has broadened access to the public universities in Arizona. This will allow us at ASU and probably the U of A also to help students find the right paths and the right pathways and to make things happen. This is a huge deal, huge, in terms of the impact. I mean, it's in my view, not just the 50,000 students who don't have access to the courses. We're requiring that you have to get a B in these courses right now. What if you can't get a B at age 14 in the course and you can get a C? So you pass the course. You're out in Arizona. You're cut out. And Arizona is one of the only states. And so I think there's huge opportunities here. And so I would at least say that it would help us as a system between the 3 of us if this was explicit, scaled, big deal, big announcement. Everybody knows it. All the counselors know it. All the families know it. Everybody knows it. There's more than one way to get into a university in Arizona. And so I just think it's a huge deal, and that's why I went back and counted how many hours I've been in these meetings.
President Crow, I'm not sure we appreciate the hour business. I'm sad to hear the 1,600 hours, as a matter of fact, but I do appreciate your comments. I do think it's a very big deal. What I've not understood, and when I was chair, I really tried to deal with this, but still did not understand how the board had been so clear 20 years ago, 2 decades ago, on differentiating the missions of the 3 universities and the importance of heading in different directions to meet the broader educational needs of the state of Arizona. Yet, in doing so, a whole set of policies continued to be maintained that insisted on commonality across the 3 rather than differentiation among the 3. I believe, indeed, you're correct, that the importance of this is about reaching attainment in the state of Arizona and achieving the level of attainment that we desire. There are so many roadblocks in our way in achieving the goal that we have set for attainment, and this is one way that we can ease the way toward achieving that. So I think your comments are extremely important about what President Cruz Rivera, his staff, and the university are doing at this particular stage. Regent Schupman.
It's good to be a guy on his way out because I can be the contrarian voice and then not show up later on, so it's okay. So enjoy your 1,601st hour, President Rivera.
You're still here.
I'm still here. They can't make me leave, it turns out.
Indeed, we are happy you're still here.
Well, you may not be by the end of my comments.
I suspect I will.
So one of the things that occurred to me as we went through this is, are we solving the right problem? One of the things that is involved in this proposal is to put a subcommittee of the board together to work with the universities more broadly to take a look at the impact of all of this. That subcommittee, if you stop to think about what we really have faced over the years, starts with the fact that the facts you presented. 1 in 5 high schools doesn't offer all the courses. Well, that impacts all 3 of our universities. There was only 1 counselor for every 1,200 students in this state. I have 3, 4 kids going through these schools now in college. Not one of them saw a counselor in all of the 12 grades they were in Arizona schools. What we have here is a communication problem that's extraordinarily big. Reaching those 50,000 kids through the counselors isn't going to work, in my opinion. They just don't have contact with them. So one of the problems isn't necessarily your standards or the change to the standard, because you're able to accept them today. There is nothing stopping NAU from targeting those students with a letter that says, if you don't have the 16 core courses, NAU has a solution for you, call us. There's a way to do this even without the pilot program. I really support what we're trying to do here, and I think we need to figure it out. But we have so many other problems that are bigger than just that issue, including the fact that there's confusion today over admission standards. The last 2 Regents meetings we've had, we've talked about, we go to the high schools and there's confusion among the counselors and the students and the parents in high schools today. And we have the same admission standards today. What's this going to do then? If we make a big deal out of it and say, come to NAU because it's more open and available to you, how is that message received? Is it received that, well, now, if you can't quite cut it at the other 2, you go to the next echelon, and how does that received by the alumni and the quality? I can hear the naysayers. Okay, so let me get this straight. They produce more teachers than any of the other universities, and now we're going to have teachers that can't do math. Now, it's unfair and it's not true, but I worry about the perception because our communication ability is so limited. Our schools aren't helping us with this because they don't have enough counselors. I just would say that focusing on juniors and seniors with the messaging that you have could be done, as it could be for the other 2, without doing a formal pilot. and then perhaps adopting a change that's more broad and impactful once you know if the hypothesis is actually true. Now, I support what you want to do here, and I'm going to vote for it if the time comes. But I want you to think about whether it's better for you to do this first, sort of a stealth attempt, rather than making a pilot program a big deal. I agree with President Crow that when the decision is made to make it permanent, maybe that's the time we go out with a big explosion of carefully thought about communication. And those are my points. I just want you to think about what's best and easiest for you, because I believe you could do this without a change in making it formal. And you could target that communication to the families and the students and the schools equally as well, whether it's considered a pilot at the official level or not. Those are my comments. Thank you.
Thank you. Very thoughtfully done, Regent Schupman. Regent Herbold.
I agree with Ron in terms of the concern about what this does to the overall image of the school, to tell you the truth, and the degree. And it's quite possible, especially if we make a big deal out of this, that the message is it's easier to get into NAU than it is the other two schools. Therefore, the degree must not be worth quite as much. And that sends a terrible message to the alumni and to the public in regard to what you're trying to achieve. So I think that concern is very real. And I'm also struck by the fact that you made a comment that we're doing most of these anyway today. So think hard about making this a hard and fast rule, because if in fact you're doing it today, the price you're going to pay is all the publicity around what is NAU. I guess it's the easy school to get into within the state. And anyway, I'm really concerned about that. Secondly, the financial stuff is important. There's going to be a lot of added costs here in terms of counselors, extra courses to basically bring students up to speed and the like. And the last board meeting, we talked about we need a financial model for NAU in the context of where you're going. And this exacerbates that to some extent because it's more in terms of costs. I don't think that we should rely on TRIF money to do this stuff simply because, as we all know, it can go away. And the thing you like with TRIF is standalone projects where you can add $1.3 million to this project doing quantum analysis in terms of computer design or whatever, that if it does go away, you can shift things around quite easily, and it doesn't send a shockwave through your entire financials. So I also wonder about what the community colleges will say in the context of what are they doing? They're moving into my turf. So I also want to applaud this write-up. This was excellent, and I understand that your crew plus the staff of the ABOR, in my estimation, did an excellent job here. And we need to do more of this in terms of quality write-ups from the school and then from ABOR, and create the give and take that should go on between ABOR and the schools when a proposal gets digested, so to speak, before it ends up in the book. But this was excellent. So,
Thanks, Regent Herbold. Regent Manson?
Thank you. I have a number of questions, so please bear with me. I'm going to start with an easy one. The 50,000 students, are those seniors, are those 9 through 12?
9 through 12.
9 through 12. So a quarter of that is the senior class that we could, well, a quarter of that is the junior class that we could impact
Sure.
with the program in the first year. Do you have any sense of what percentage of those students you might anticipate applying? And so what I'm trying to get at is the vast majority of NAU students are on the Flagstaff campus. There is an issue, a public perception issue and a realistic issue with traffic in terms of Flagstaff and the number of students that are on the Flagstaff campus. The number has dropped, in the last couple of years, which I think has alleviated some of the stress and conflict in the town. But I'm curious as to kind of what impact you see on students actually on the Flagstaff main campus.
I think it'll be in year one on the margins. In year two, perhaps a little more. To Regent Reidenauer's question about, how does this step in? And the seniors are kind of already there, right? Like the seniors probably know what they're taking next year or will in the next month or two. Absolutely. So I think over time, the impact will become greater. At the same time, Karen's team has done an exhaustive task force work on our statewide locations and how we're going to utilize those moving forward. So I think some of the students that may be today joining us in Flagstaff may in the future join us at one of our statewide locations. In Flagstaff, it is a dense place, and we are hoping to spread the wealth to our statewide locations as we're looking at our roadmap initiatives and other academic programs at different sites as well.
Okay, and that's kind of where I was trying to get, was I wanted to understand if there was going to be an additional expansion, as it were, of the statewide impact with these students, because many of them may not only not go because the courses weren't offered, they may go because they're rural and it's harder to get to Flagstaff, to actually attend classes.
Absolutely.
The issue of, and I want to back up a minute because from the overall picture, for me, this is the first step in that process of differentiating the market that I think is truly important. I think we have kind of pigeonholed ourselves in this state in terms of who goes to college, and I think we have missed an opportunity to serve more broadly. And I think the differentiation of these schools is something that's truly important moving forward to meet the broader needs of the state. So I really do think that this is the right direction to move in terms of differentiating and making each of the universities distinctive from each other. There is an issue, and I think Ron and Bob both mentioned it, in terms of let's make sure that we aren't, we are cognizant of the issue of quality and value of degree, and that we don't lose high quality students who are currently attending NAU for programs that we are exceptionally good in at that, at NAU, because there's some perception that we are devaluing the degree. I think that's very important. I think it's really important how you communicate that, because that's not what you're doing. I'm sorry, I got to get back to the next page. How currently you have a fairly low yield on the students that you admit with deficiencies. How do you intend to address that? Because these will be those same kinds of students, and if they aren't coming now, what's going to make them come because they can send in an application?
Great, excellent question. At the same time, we've been reimagining and looking at our admissions policies. The president has charged Vice President Bjorn Flugstein and myself with looking at our price and positioning since early August. And after a number, thousands of hours of looking at data and examining specific populations and yield of Arizona residents, I think our upcoming policies in terms of financial aid will address that question. It's not fully baked yet. More to come in the next 2 months for also fall 23. So this first entering class will be the first entering class under some different looks at financial aid that we're planning as well. So I think that will help address the yield for specific populations.
Okay, so you could actually have a ripple effect of this change on those that are currently applying and the yield of those as well.
Yes.
Okay, so which then moves back to my Flagstaff impact question. So those are intricately linked.
Absolutely. And I will also say that I think we can say this, I could say this broadly about institutions of higher education. It takes a long time to really change perception and change dynamics at an institution. We are aiming to make this quick and make a splash and make it big, because we want to be known for providing access to students that may have self-selected out previously, and ensuring their success with our amazing support systems and academic programs.
Karen, did you want to say something?
Yeah, I'd just like to add too, just on the reflecting on some of the very good comments that have been made here, that, reinforce again that I think among our students, and I'll say this and ask Annika to correct me if I'm wrong, I don't think that we have a reputation that attracts students that's based on our selectivity, number one. And number two, I would argue that we can have and grow a great reputation based on the impact that we have. That is where do we take a student from where they enter to the point when they graduate and where they go after graduation. I'd like to invest in building a reputation on that. And then lastly, I just want to say that from my point of view, these are not a pool of students that we're talking about here that are better candidates for community colleges. They have fulfilled quite a few academic requirements, and all else being equal, we know that really statistically sending those students to a community college would not increase their prospects of graduation relative to what they'd experience with us or any of the other universities. So I think it is a way to serve this population of students better and again, going back to their perceptions of what their opportunities are, I'd like them to think not that NAU is the easy place to go, but that NAU is a place where I can have an opportunity. And I can go far with what I can do with that opportunity as I develop myself to fulfill my goals.
I think that was really well said. Thank you. And then my final comment is simply going to be that I am supportive of this. I would like to see an annual check back with some real data in terms of what you've experienced. And that may be actually this, a year from now.
Sure.
Knowing that you're going to change it, what are the things that you've done in this year in anticipation, so that we aren't 2 years or 3 years into the process and then going, oops, we should have shifted somewhere along the way.
And next year at this time, we'll have a majority of our first year student applications in for fall 23 at this point, towards the end of January. Yes, we continue to admit and enroll throughout the summer, but we'll have critical mass.
Correct.
Certainly.
So I just want to make sure that we're looking at this at the earliest opportunity to make sure that we have course corrections as quickly as possible if we need them.
Thank you very much, Regent Manson. I think what Regent Manson just said is very important for all of us. And it responds, I think, to a number of the comments that have been made by regents. And that is, we need to really have reports from NAU on this, look at what's going on here, and that will enable us then to address the broader issues, at least that we can control at the Board of Regents. Recognizing, as you said, Regent Schupman, that this problem really is far more complex and bigger than just this single issue. But again, personally, I laud you, President Cruz Rivera, and all of you associated with NAU for taking a step to give a try for this and to really move the institution. And I applaud you, President Cruz Rivera, in the first months you've been here, and really beginning to look at the institution and ask how it can be more responsive to Arizona in some very differentiated ways. We will come back to this issue. This is a discussion item only today, and we'll come back to it, I suspect, multiple times as you all begin to look at what happens in the course of admissions, and then as you follow students up and really look at their performance and their success at the university. Because in the end, achieving overall attainment is a goal, but also assuring the quality of the institution and the quality of what goes on at the institution is important to all of us, to the university and to this board as well. If there are no further comments, since this is a discussion item, right, Andrew and Jane, then we will move on. Oh, I'm sorry, Regent Herbold.
Given that we've been doing this for a while, is it possible to do the analysis on these students in terms of comparing them to the so-called mainstream?
We've done some of that the way we can get at it in our system. We are in the process of changing our student information system, which anyone who's done that before, it's not an easy task. So we've started that so we can more accurately, students can be deficient for lack of a class or a low GPA. So unbundling those has proven challenging to date. Now, you mentioned that statement. We can do it today in the delegated. We don't always do it. It depends on what the student's application shows in terms of class and GPA, and if they've improved throughout their high school career and that type of thing. We don't want a horrible freshman year in high school to completely derail a student. So we look at a number of different factors today. Some very objective and trackable, and some, okay, what did the student do over time? So not exactly able to do that totally today. We do know that students that come in with 2 deficiencies in a second language retain higher than students with any other 2, and higher than students that have 2 deficiencies in any of math, lab science, or English, according to 3 years of data.
Amazing.
So we do have that piece.
Yeah, that's very interesting.
Regent Herbold, perhaps what NAU could do, if you can do this kind of analysis that you're describing, Annika, is maybe at the June meeting, if that's possible, we could look at some of the data that you're pointing to, Regent Herbold, and just see if we have any information. We may not, but if you can do that, it strikes me that might be useful to us too.
Yeah, if there's a correlation between second language and overall success, that would be very, very fascinating to look into.
I agree. Any other comments? Regent Ridenour.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I'm concerned that this will lose some kind of emphasis as we go along, and I'm with Dr. Crow that when we get to this point, which I assume we're already there, that we need to make a big deal about it. So is there any way we can, fast track this? In other words, I know we need data and all that, but are we going to be discussing? I hate to, I'm not going to be here probably in June, so.
You want to vote on it now, right?
Yeah.
We hope you're still here, Bill.
So can we get this so that we have a further discussion and/or a vote in the committee in maybe February? Or how do we not lose steam on this going forward?
I think you raised a very important issue, Regent Ridenour, and I think what the Chair Manson, John Arnold, and I need to sit down and discuss next steps after we complete this meeting and see what we can do to move this forward. Because I'm certainly with you and President Crow. I think it's a big deal. I think it's important to send the message, and I think we have to ask ourselves how we do that. So thank you. Yes, Jane?
Yes, thank you, Regent Pentley. I just want to make one clarification so that we all understand the numbers. The 50,000 number is a preliminary number that is based on work that Joe O'Reilly at ASU is doing. He is in the process of refining those numbers, and he will be coming to the board in the next few months with some reports on the work that he is currently doing. So the 50,000 number may increase, it may decrease as he continues with that work. I would also like to point out that those 50,000 students are in schools that they aren't able to get the full 16. Some of them are only able to get 1 or 2 of the requirements. So some of them may be unable to even meet the 14 core requirements, and we will have some more information on those numbers later. The largest percentage of those 50,000 at this point in time with the preliminary data that we have are missing just the second language. So we feel good about the ultimate number, ultimately, that there is a fairly decent sized population that this change would benefit. But I do want to make sure that we all understand that those numbers are not, that there's not 50,000 that are getting 14 core requirements. They may only be getting a few, or they may be getting 15. So, and we will bring those numbers and we will continue to work with NAU as we have more data.
Thanks very much, Jane, for that comment. I'm sorry. Go ahead, President Cruz.
Just to, if I may, thank the board for the very thoughtful comments and the opportunity for us to present this request. I just want to highlight that this is a piece of a broader puzzle. So we are bringing to you this request for differentiated admissions, but it is also part of, or the first part of another request that will come to you at some point soon during the spring semester around the way we will do our price positioning and our financial aid strategies in support of our access mission. And it is also part of what you will hear later today around how we plan to use the one-time funding from TRIF to ensure that we have the capacity we need to better support these students and make sure that there is a recurring revenue stream that comes from increased retention and increased enrollment. So it is all part of a bigger package that is meant to position us to be that access and equity-driven university for the state of Arizona. So, and of course, all of the marketing and messaging that goes around that to ensure that we have our high quality, high reputation, distinctive excellence there is important. At the end of the day, what we want to be able to say to the people of Arizona is, notwithstanding that some of the high schools have bigger issues, right? Is if you are taking the classes that are available to you and you are doing a good job, you're getting a 3.0 GPA, and you come from a family in Arizona that makes less than X amount, that you have a place at NAU with zero out-of-pocket expenses for tuition and fees. That's the kind of narrative we want to build. And then, of course, the quality is, the proof is in the pudding, is that our students will be very sought after for high demand and high wage jobs in the Arizona economy and well positioned for postgraduate pursuit of studies. So that's, it's a bigger picture. Today, we're only showing you a piece of it, but I wanted to make sure that you knew that we're being very thoughtful about putting all of this together. Thank you.
Thanks, President Cruz Rivera. What Jane mentioned also a moment ago about the data and Joe Riley, we have at this point a collaboration among ASU, Helios, and the Board of Regents that really has improved substantially the data that we have about high schools and what's going on in high schools across the state. For some time, I felt that more board members needed to be aware of that data and see its implications. I began to be concerned about that as I watched every May the report that comes about high schools that send no students to college or post-secondary, any post-secondary. And that has grown year after year that I've been on this board, of the number of high schools that send no one to post-secondary education. We all know that that is not something that we want to see in the state of Arizona. The question is, what's going on in high schools across the state related to the discussion that we have today, as well as a whole set of additional issues. So I continue to believe that as a board, along with our staff, we need to be looking at that data and trying to understand what implications it has for broader policy for this board. And this goes to the point that Regent Schupman made earlier. This is a complex issue around which there are a number of variables that we should be examining. We may well need to change policy here, but we need to gather some additional information, in my view, along with looking at what happens at NAU before we're prepared to actually make those changes in policy. And that's the only final comment that I would have. I've had the benefit of seeing those data a couple of times at this point, and they're quite important to look at You can slice and dice those data in quite visual ways that help anyone who engages in that effort to really understand better what's happening in our high schools across the state. With that, yes, President Crow.
I want to make a comment, Regent Finley, on the center itself and to Regent Schutman's concern. So you now have, for the first time with the ASU Helios Center for Educational Excellence in the Decision Theater at the Helios Foundation, this capability to go down to the individual school, the individual student, the individual community. And it is the case, just as Regent Schutman suggested, that we have these performance issues at the K-12 section, part of the enterprise in the state overall, which is leading to Regent Herbold's point, massive under application and under engagement in higher education. So there are millions of students attending public universities in the United States, which could never go to any of the 3 universities in Arizona. There's no university set up for them. There's no mechanism set up for them to attend. If you get a sense of that, it's an aberration. It's a very unusual thing, and it is very, very important that we work this out on every dimension possible.
Thank you. With that, we are called upon today to approve online metric targets for the Arizona universities. I think many of us, both at the universities and on the board, have seen a substantial increase in the number of online students, led by the work of ASU, particularly with its online program. We finally have those metrics, and I'm going to call on Jane Kuhn to make comments on those metrics before we move toward a motion. Jane?
Thank you, Chair Penley. As we saw at the last meeting, the online metrics and targets for discussion. We have a presentation here that goes through each one of those. So if we can go through the next slide, please. The online course completion rate. This is a measure of how many courses students are completing towards their degree. You can see the history there, and that each of the institutions has proposed fairly flat targets over the next 3 years. As we know, online students respond and react very differently throughout their educational career, and stop and start and stop and start. So we're not going to see, these rates are actually fairly high as we look at them. So I think maintaining flat or slight increases is doing extremely well in this market. Next slide, please. Pace of progression toward a degree. This measures the average number of credits that a student is completing in an academic period. And you can see those are fairly similar across all 3 institutions, anywhere from 12 to 14. And they have all also proposed fairly flat metrics, actually completing 12 to 14 credit hours in an academic term is essentially taking, 4 or 5 courses over an academic period, which is, again, with the online characteristics of a student stopping and starting. This is a very good measure, and we can kind of get an idea about how long it may take them to complete their college degree. However, the caveat there, I would say, is that many of them come in with 3 to 5 transcripts from other institutions. So they are transferring in a great deal of courses. So graduation rates, depending upon that, could be anywhere from 2 to 8 years. These are good measures. Next, please. Courses taught by faculty with a doctorate or other relevant terminal degree. Again, they are doing well in this space. NAU is proposing some increases. U of A and ASU will be flat for their targets in that area. Next. And taught by faculty who are benefit eligible. Very similar story to the last. Next. And online program rank, which this is inverse, but you can see how the universities are performing in this. ASU extremely well, University of Arizona very, very well, and NAU is making wonderful progress in this ranking as well. I would invite any of the online leads or provosts to answer any questions or provide any additional comments.
Provost, any comments? Provost Gonzalez?
First of all, I want to kind of thank the board for working with us on developing these online metrics. I think that there was a lot of understanding that our online population is a very diverse population, different from our immersion population, and therefore we need a more differentiated way to look at academic success. I think these metrics really hit on the different ways that they proceed through, and we feel very happy with the end result. And I also think that we think that we're doing quite well in this regard, and so our flat aspirations really, I think, reflect that we want to just maintain the level of strength that we've been able to achieve. We certainly want to continue to strengthen our rankings. We always want to do that. We have high aspirations, but anyway, we feel very good about these metrics.
Thanks, Provost Gonzalez. Provost Pugliese, any comment?
Thank you. Yes, the only thing I would add to build on what Provost Gonzalez just said is that these metrics give us a focus on how our programs are serving this particular population of students, which is a population of students that has a number of challenges in terms of progressing, including that, Jane mentioned that they often, weave together credits from multiple institutions where they've not completed a degree. So there's articulation with our curricula, and then the competing demands of being an adult, likely employed, place-bound student. So we welcome that focus on how we're serving our students, and we'll use that to our own internal advantage to improve how our online programs are performing.
Thanks very much. Questions, comments? President Crowe.
I just have a technical question so I can understand the data a little bit better, since I happen to be at this committee meeting and I'm seeing the data. I just wanted, so is the University of Arizona data not related to Ashford? That's only the previous U of A programs?
Yeah,
their degree programs?
yes.
Because the other U of A global programs are different. And so how are those? I'm just trying to understand what's in the data and what isn't in
Right.
the
So
data.
at this point in time, right now, the UAGC data is not in these metrics, and neither is NAU's personalized learning numbers. We are going to be working with them on separate metrics related to those two.
And that was my reason for
yes.
asking, because apples and apples and oranges and oranges, some
Yes.
require admission to the university, some don't require admission to the university, some are taught by university faculty. Some are not taught by university faculty, so these don't seem to be apples and apples to me. So this is all apples.
This is all apples, yes. Yes, it is.
Make sure we're only got no salad.
And then just one other data point for Regents. And so for whatever the set of reasons, there's 35 million people in the United States that went to college and never finished. Over 1 million are in Arizona. This is a massive opportunity to upgrade the American economy. And so we look at these students as unbelievably important to our mission and our success. And this is a really important thing for us. But I'll say that the notion of normal metrics for this, it's very difficult. I mean, these are high-performing institutions. Let me tell you, these numbers that are up there, all three of the institutions, given that we're looking at apples and apples. We may have other programs that are measured differently, but these are really, really important things. And I just wanted for other regions to know, like, I don't know what's going on in the US. So, $750 billion of spending in Pell Grants, and less than half of them have degrees or certificates of any type. It's a disaster, and this is the disaster relief.
Yeah. No, I agree with you, President Crowe. And to that very point, when you look in your report, you have a to be determined element on progress of these students. And I really want us to address that issue of progress, not in the same way that we look at full-time traditional students, by the way, because for a working individual who has a family and other challenges going on, and who has failed to progress normally, for your very point, and is a part of that million in Arizona and the broader number in the US, we still need to look at progress and ask ourselves, how can we gauge progress and help those students to improve their progress through the institution, recognizing that it is not the same measure. It's not a retention measure like the one that we use for full-time students. So while I laud the work that's been done on this, and I'm not sure I know of any other state that's engaged in looking at online education in the way we're doing it. Maybe they are.
2 states, Pennsylvania and Maryland are the only 2.
Are the only other 2. But there's more work to be done here. Regent Herbold.
President Robbins, do you know the number in terms of that doctorate measure? Courses taught by someone who has a doctorate would be for Zovio?
Chair Penley and Regent Herbold, I don't know the answer to that. My recollection is the number of terminal degrees in Zovio, or when Ashford was part of Zovio, when they were moving over to UAGC, is around 40 to 50%. But I see Barry on the screen.
Yeah,
and John's
page 23, President Robbins, of the report that was prepared.
Yes, the report is for undergraduate
Global.
students only. So this report does not include graduate or PhDs. It is undergraduate online students only.
But I thought the question was how many
Teachers are
Teachers
doctorates.
have
Right.
PhDs, yes, that is in
That's a
the
different
report.
issue.
I'm sorry, Jane, repeat what you said.
No, they were asking how many faculty with PhDs are teaching, and I think Dr. Robbins has asked Barry to respond.
I'll admit, I misread these data, because when I read University of Arizona Global, I read that as University of Arizona Global Campus, that is the old Ashford University.
Yeah, no.
I think it's absolutely essential that we have data on UAGC,
Yes.
and we look at UAGC in the same way we're looking at other online programs. While it certainly has a different relationship to this board in that it is an independent institution, we still hold you, President Robbins, as you know, for raising the quality of the particular program, set of programs in that university. So when will we get those data, Jane?
I have sent an email out asking for who should participate on that group to look at the UAGC metrics and to begin to develop them. So I'm hoping within the next few months, no later than the June meeting, that we would have something for you. As well, NAU has submitted their proposed metrics for PL. They were just submitted a few weeks prior to this meeting, so we did not incorporate that into this particular meeting because we do need to meet and discuss those prior to bringing them forward. So we do plan on adding those 2 components to the online metrics report. And regarding number 2, the it's not retention, it's not persistence. We tried to come up with a measure for stop-outs to see how online students are progressing through their degree. And it became very confusing, not only for us and for myself, but also for our folks at each of the institutions. So we will be revisiting that. And Regent Prinley has provided us with some great ideas around that one. So we will be getting back together here in the next few weeks to discuss how we can develop a metric that is meaningful and understandable in that regard.
Thanks very much, Jane. Other comments? Regent Manson.
I just want to say a huge thank you. And I know when we started talking about coming up with online metrics about a year and a half ago, there was a big struggle about how do we measure this because it is so different from immersion on campus student experience. And so I just want to say thank you to staff and to people at the universities for working through this. I know it's been very complicated and there've been a lot of discussions back and forth about how do we measure this, and there really wasn't a lot of data nationally to help us kind of narrow the field on what is the appropriate number. And so I also want to add that as we collect these data and evaluate them, I think it's important that we reevaluate and make sure that where the actual number isn't perhaps a target, the trend may be the target. And so I just want to make sure that because this is the first time we've been through this process, that we take the time as we get the data over the next couple of years to make sure that we are measuring and understanding what the data is telling us.
Regent Herbold.
This also, I applaud. I think these measures are terrific, but it also suggests that in the future, this could be a powerful marketing tool for the schools in the context of what is an online degree. It's something different than you thought it was when you listened to those University of Phoenix commercials and read all the bad publicity coming out of it. It's a different beast. So there's a huge opportunity. Back to the global campus issue, this issue of graduates or students being taught by PhDs and like is totally involved in this overall issue or puzzle related to Zovio and the future. So it's a huge opportunity for course corrections if needed. So it fits right into what we need to do in that score.
Oh, President Crow.
Just two technical points relative to these metrics. I think these metrics are very, very important, as Provost Gonzalez indicated. I'd say that there is one overarching metric that we need to be paying very close attention to, and that is how many people graduate from these programs. So last year we graduated, I think, 12,000 individuals from our online programs with degrees that were worth the market value of our on-campus degrees. So we graduated individuals because of the way that the programs that are being run, where we can say we graduated this many people that we wouldn't normally have been able to graduate with the same faculty, now empowered with the technology that we have, who have then entered the market with these degrees in engineering and nursing. And
that's a story that needs to be told.
Yes, and that should be in the metric profile of these activities, including the measured impact of these individuals in the market. What was their ROI? What was their return? What are their salaries? What are their comparables? And so forth. And I just hope that as we further this elaboration of the metrics here, that we look at that as a very, very important metric. Now, let's state it one more time. We graduated 12,000 people with fantastic ASU degrees taught by ASU faculty who entered the market that we would have never been able to graduate in the past. And now we're graduating them. And this is a really, for us, it's a very, very, very intensive mission for us.
Thanks, President Crow.
Yeah.
Chad? Yes.
Thank you, Regent Penley. Just to address President Crow's point, and one additional point is I see Regent Duvall is on the screen. We do report as part of our completions report the number of graduates from online programs from ASU. You will see that at the March meeting. And so while we do not have a specific metric for online graduate degrees, and maybe we need to look at our online number of undergraduate degrees from online programs, we do report that to the board, and we will continue to report that. With regard to UAGC and Global Campus, we have been working with Barry and the University of Arizona about providing that data. We intend to provide that data. It simply just was not soup yet to produce it as part of this with the other online programs. Finally, what needs to be said is Regent Duvall has been pushing us to differentiate. Again, we do this. We say we want differentiated institutions, and then we come up with the same metric for all three institutions. Regent Duvall, and I apologize, Regent Duvall, if you were going to make that point, but we're very well aware of this. We are trying to square that with the idea of overwhelming the committee and the board with too many metrics. We have 15 enterprise metrics. Each of the universities are coming forward with 11 to 13 institutional metrics. We now have 6 online metrics. And so we will continue to iterate as a board staff in working with universities in the coming years to try and figure a better way forward on that. So
thanks very much, Chad. Regent Duvall, did you have a comment?
He made it, and quite eloquently.
I know he said he did, but I thought I'd give you a chance.
You're very kind. I appreciate it. I mean, this is simply following the same course that our traditional metrics followed, which is that we started with system metrics, and then we, much too slowly to everybody's thought, but we ultimately have matured into differentiated metrics. And I suspect this is the necessary first step in our getting to that inevitable second step.
Thanks, Regent Duvall. Barry, if I could call on you, please, just to clarify here. So ultimately, we will have metrics for University of Arizona Online, University of Arizona Global Campus.
Those are the same thing. No, they're not. Sorry. University of Arizona Global.
Right.
And then Global Campus.
All right, and is University of Arizona Online, the University of Arizona Global, or are there 3 sets of metrics that we need for the University of Arizona? 2 or 3?
Ultimately, our recommendation, Chair Penley, would be to do 2. A set of metrics for the University of Arizona Online and a set of metrics for the University of Arizona Global Campus.
Okay, that's what I thought. Yeah, and so I'd recommend that in presenting these metrics, rather than calling the online ones, and this is up to you all, of course, but to avoid confusion, since we're now calling University of Arizona Online, University of Arizona Global, maybe we should talk about it as University of Arizona Online and University of Arizona Global Campus, so that we have some clear differentiation here, it strikes me. Does that make sense to members of the board, to you, President Robbins?
Yes, Regent Penley, it does make sense. I do think, and I'll ask for a ruling from Barry on this, there's utility in the UA Global, and maybe Dr. Wilson could comment on this too. Clearly, as you'll hear later today, we think UAGC will more clearly be part of these metrics as this transition occurs. But isn't there also some utility in looking at UA Global, which is different from UA Global Campus?
Exactly.
Right.
That's why I raised
That's
this
the
issue. Is
confusion.
it 2 or 3?
Yeah, because those courses are, while some of them are online courses and distance learning, some of them are taught at campuses in other countries. So that's where the confusion may be coming, and maybe Barry and Craig could comment more.
Thanks, President Robbins. Okay, any other comments then? Barry?
We certainly have the ability to disaggregate that and to report on history and to establish goals on that disaggregated basis. We have largely been looking at this as 2 sets of metrics, one for UA Online and one for University of Arizona Global Campus. We certainly have the ability to be adaptable and to modify that per the board or University of Arizona needs.
Thanks, Barry. Other comments before I make a motion here? We talked about the previous issue with NAU's differentiation as a big deal. In my view, this is also a very big deal. It is a big deal because of the increased enrollment in online programs. It is a big deal because of the extent to which our 3 universities are all involved in these online enrollments. And it's a big deal, as President Crow pointed out, from a perspective of the number of individuals who begin university education, drop out for a whole set of reasons, and never are able to return to a traditional campus because of the restrictions that provides them with their work and their family. So to me, this is a big deal. Now, in the motion I'm going to make, I'm going to add some stipulations to it based on the discussion that we've just had. Yes, I'd like for us to endorse the online metrics, which I very much appreciate the work that's been done on those. But I also want to stipulate that we come back to the issue of including all online programs in some sort of way, and that we as well address the issue raised by President Crow and you, Regent Herbold, earlier, that we need to look at the ultimate extent to which we get graduates out of these online programs, recognizing that it will take far longer than it does in a traditional program, recognizing that along the way, we may well not achieve the results, and probably will not, that we get from a traditional set of programs. So those are the kinds of stipulations I'm going to add to the motion here in just a moment. So with that, I move that the committee forward to the full board for approval of online metric targets for the Arizona universities, with the stipulations that metrics be developed for all online programs, including the University of Arizona Global Campus, and that we establish a metric for degree completion from our online programs. Is there a second?
Second.
There is a second. All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Any abstentions? Thank you very much. We'll move on to item number 4, which is a discussion of Arizona State University's institutional university metric targets. Kristen Osmeña, I know, was seated over here to my left earlier, and it's taken us longer than I had hoped to get here, but I think that was a necessary and important discussion. Kristen, will you present the metrics for Arizona State University?
Great, happy to do so. We have a set of slides. The data in the slides matches the very good report that you have in your agenda. We can proceed to the next slide. And so the discussion that the board is having today follows the approval of institutional metrics in November of last year. As a reminder, these are a set of metrics that are intended to articulate areas in which ASU is distinctive as part of the ABOR University Enterprise, and it's intended to complement a set of other metrics that the board has already adopted and Chad described earlier. And on the following slides, I'll describe the 5 areas in which metrics have been established and provide some sense of the logic that we use to present a set of targets for your consideration. If we can go to the next slide. Goal 1, as established by the board, was to establish the Fulton Schools of Engineering as among the most significant engineering schools in the U.S. There were 4 specific metrics that that the board adopted as part of that goal. The first was related to bachelor's degrees awarded to students in the Fulton Schools. The second related to doctoral degrees. The third related to research expenditures, HERD expenditures for engineering only. And then the fourth related to the percentage of students who meet ABET accreditation standards. In all of the charts that you'll see, the first 3 years refer to actual data that we have, and then the following 3 columns refer to a set of targets that we've established for 22, 23, and 24. Just to give you a sense of the logic that we've applied here, for both the bachelor's degrees awarded and the doctoral degrees awarded, we've applied a set of growth rates that's generally consistent with the growth rates in the number of degrees that we've presented to you previously for those years. For metric 1.1, those growth rates are about 4 to 7% annually, depending on the year. And for the doctoral degrees, it's 3% annually, depending on the year. For 1.3, with regard to research expenditures, we've assumed a set of growth consistent with the overall growth in research expenditures that we've presented to the board previously. That makes progress towards what President Crow has articulated as a $1 billion goal in research expenditures in the not so far out future. And then finally, for the percentage of engineering students, this is a metric that we haven't constructed previously and calculated previously, and so we don't have specific data to report for prior years. We've set this goal based on an initial assessment of the proportion of students who meet those standards currently.
I'll just add on that last point so there's no confusion that we just were reviewed and reaccredited by ABET without exception, without comment.
Regent Penley, I'm happy to pause in between each goal if that's useful to.
Regent
take
Herbold,
note.
thank you, Christian.
You know, if I say to a student, hey, you want to go to ASU engineering, they have 27,000 students in engineering, versus say to them, hey, you want to go, and their rating on the US News and World Report is number 36, quite a good number. And they also have 27,000 students. I think the second argument is far more powerful. And I don't know why we don't include I know you don't like rankings, okay, but this one has a ton of power to it. And I don't know why you don't have that on the list, the US News and World Report engineering ranking.
I'll comment on this unless Provost Gonzalez would like to.
Go ahead.
So all I would say is that that's great. We could put that on for each of our programs also, which are even higher ranked than the school. That is, each of the individual degree programs even have higher status, and just sort of use that as a floating awareness of a foundational thing, just for, because I think you're right. It's the duality of very high quality and very large scale that lots of people would be attracted to.
Right.
And the only reason that our ranking is lower is that we admit students with B averages to our engineering school, and University of Michigan doesn't.
But this says to me, I want to grow enrollment.
Yes.
As opposed to, I want to continue to be excellent and also grow enrollment.
Yes, I want to produce more graduates, do more research at scale, as opposed to only narrowing and refining what you're doing. Exactly.
Well, basically, it's a dilemma in regard to excellence versus quantity. And quantity usually means dollars. So I understand this is a revenue generator big time for ASU. And that makes it good to grow it fast. But on the other hand, the quality is very important.
For all the students except the students from Arizona, it's a revenue generator.
Do you all want to include that additional measure?
We can certainly.
Yeah, we had a lot of discussions about this. I'm trying to
Right.
go back and remember
Exactly.
where, and part of it was that we want to do both. We want to grow and we want to serve
No, there's
certain
nothing wrong
populations.
with
At the
putting
same
both
time, we
of
want to
those in there.
maintain our ranking and our excellence. And we do understand that the US News and World Report ranking, in some ways, one aspect of what we're trying to achieve works against that ranking. But I see what it's very, I mean, our strength is that we're doing both, so.
That's right.
There's no question that as we've discussed this, and many of us have been in these discussions with you all, that we wanted to limit the number of metrics that we have up here. Now, there's no reason, one more probably isn't going to kill us at all. So if you all want to include that one, I think what you're hearing from members of the board is they're perfectly happy to have you do that.
If I could just add one caveat to that, because we believe that rankings without context are of no value. So that means we'll show you the class of engineering school that we are ranked around in addition to our ranking.
No, the whole story is powerful. You look at the research money, you look at the number of students, and you look at the rating. Man, this is a machine and of high quality.
Yes, it is.
I'll defer to the provost and the president, but we could come back to you at the next meeting when this comes up for action with a proposal in that area.
Okay. Why don't you proceed though, Christian, in the interest of time?
Great. For slide 2, the overall goal was to further develop ASU as an engine of social mobility. All of the numbers you see below, and there are a lot of numbers, are 6-year graduation rates. Metric 2.1 is a differentiation between Pell Grant recipients and separately students who did not receive a Pell Grant. And then metric 2.2 is students broken out by racial and ethnic categories. Just to give you a sense of the logic here, for 2.1, we worked to present a set of targets that would close the gap between graduation rates between Pell Grant recipients and their peers. And then in 2.2, the overarching logic was really to grow students from groups that currently have the lowest graduation rates faster than their peers.
Comments or questions? Please proceed, Christian.
Great. For goal 3, the metric that the board defined was the the count of interdisciplinary and transdisciplinary research expenditures. Again, this ties to the HERD ranking, and we projected a set of targets that would maintain the same percentage of expenditures in that category as our overall growth.
one thing related to the rankings, and both of the last two goals, there are also rankings in those categories of activity also that we might just add if we're going to be putting it, because it just shows a relative positioning of the institution. So there are rankings for this goal, and there are rankings also for the previous goal in terms of how many Pell eligible, what's the gap between Pell eligible and non-Pell eligible students, and sort of how we're doing compared to others might be useful.
For goal 4 on the next slide, the overarching goal was to integrate cutting-edge technological innovation and scalability in all of our realms. That's measured in 2 ways. One, the course enrollments in what we currently define as adaptive learning courses, to get a sense of how many students actually engage with those opportunities. And then the second is a way of getting at the student success in those courses, looking at retention of students who have had one of those experiences. And so we show both growth and enrollment consistent with the enrollment growth that we project across the enterprise. And then second, the retention goals are aimed to get us towards that 90% goal that President Crow's articulated.
Thanks, Christian.
And then lastly, goal 5 was a set of goals that were intended to articulate how ASU would create solutions and improve the lives of Arizonans and those beyond. The 2 metrics that we've defined there are metric 5.1 related to how ASU digital prep is enrolling students and partnering with schools to enroll students in rural and underserved Arizona. That definition largely relies on the number of partners that are Title I schools. And then 5.2 is the number of industry partners with our science and technology centers, which we've discussed as part of our new economy initiative. And these are a subset of the partners that we intend to have financial relationships with that would contribute financially to those centers.
Christian, thanks very much. I know this has taken a lot of work, but my reaction to it, and you already know my reaction because we spent a lot of time talking about it, is these metrics well represent how ASU has positioned itself, the brand that it has described for itself, and the rhetoric surrounding that particular issue. So I just appreciate you and everyone else at ASU who's worked so hard to produce this set of metrics. Comments by members of the board. This is a discussion item, so if you do have comments or questions, please proceed.
Regent Duval.
Oh, Regent Duval. Sorry,
Yeah.
sir.
Sure. Thank you, Mr. Chair. Slide number 2, Christian, just a quick question. The erosion of the non-Pell 6-year students was 10% going into the 23 class. I'm assuming, and I just want some more color on this and commentary, is that the evisceration of out-of-state students that occurred because of COVID, or is there something else going on there? That's a significant variance of the number leading into it and the number coming out of it.
Before he answers, there's a high probability it's an error, but go ahead.
It is, and we'll correct that. Yes.
I was hoping no one would notice that.
And I think the better source, in your agenda, you have the correct number in the report there.
All right, good.
Perfect. Thanks, Regent Duval.
Thank you.
Any other comments or questions? If not, we're going to take a break before we return for the University of Arizona's metrics here in a moment. This is a discussion item. We'll take about a 10-minute break. We're running about 45 minutes behind at this point. Nonetheless, I would not have encouraged us to shorten what we've discussed. I think it's been very important. So we will return here at 10:55. And we'll get underway with the University of Arizona. Any comments?
What time is dinner?
At the rate we're going, it could be late, Ron. Let's take a 10-minute break, folks, until 10:55.
Last semester.
We have about a half an hour to cover an hour's worth of material. So I'm not sure how well we're going to do on this. But if I could turn to Barry Drummond here in just a moment. We are at item number 5, request for approval of the University of Arizona's institutional university metric targets. And if I could turn to Barry and let him give us a brief explanation of those. You've all had a chance to look at them. But Barry, are you there?
Yes. Good morning, Chair Penley, presidents, provosts,
Thank you
and colleagues.
for that from the ether, Barry.
Good morning, everyone. We recommend that the board adopt the proposed University of Arizona institutional metric targets, it's as submitted in the book. We know that you are not just the board for the University of Arizona, you are the board for all 3 public universities, and that you're seeking to develop a portfolio of differentiated and distinctive universities. We also know that what gets measured gets done, and that aspirational goals and metrics are critical for each of the 3 institutions that you govern. We have very much appreciated working with you to develop the metric goals and these targets proposed today, and believe that these goals and metrics are an important step on that differentiation journey for the 3 universities. This morning, we're recommending 3-year targets for 3 different goals. Those 3 goals have 13 discrete metric targets. I know that we have endeavored to keep this as simple as possible, and no simpler. I believe that we have successfully achieved that. The first of those goals is to strategically recruit prospective high potential undergraduate students. The first metric target for that goal is the US News and World Report National University Ranking. This is widely read, and used. As we look at the underlying methodology, many of the underlying methodology components are ones that are important to the University of Arizona, to the board, and to the state. And so the 4 subsequent metric targets, 1.2 to 1.5, are highly aligned with that US News and World Report ranking, and in particular focus on student success as measured by retention and graduation. That is heavily weighted by US News and World Report, by the board, and by the U of A. Goals 1.3 to 1.5 in particular focus on disaggregated components for retention and graduation that are opportunities by improving them to increase the overall retention and graduation rates for the U of A, thereby increasing our national US News and World Report ranking. The second goal, tackle critical problems at the edges of human endeavor. The U of A is a national leader in quite a number of areas of scholarly development and research. The 3 metrics here will come as no surprise to anyone at the U of A, in the state, or nationally, as they're highly aligned with state priorities for economic development and highly aligned with past investments at the state, at the board, and at the university level. The third goal is to raise the profile and prestige of the U of A's academic programs. The U of A is one of the largest producers, public university producers of graduate students in the country. The 5 graduate program rankings that we're proposing here are highly aligned with state priorities, with Arizona Commerce Authority priorities, and with past board TRIF investment priorities. And they include a medical school ranking, an aggregated health science ranking, a ranking for resilient agriculture, science, and engineering, a ranking for space, optics, and aerospace engineering, and a ranking for professional programs like business law and management information systems. With that, I'll take all comments and questions.
Thanks very much, Barry. Any questions or comments? Hearing none. Any other comments, President Robbins, you'd like to make?
No, Regent Penley, I think Barry covered it well, and I would just like to thank everyone who is involved with generating these goals and the collaboration with the board and helping us get to where we are. I think Barry's done a good job of highlighting the areas that we think are important, and I don't have any further comments.
I certainly agree, and I appreciate the cooperation and the collaboration, President Robbins and Barry, that the board received from all of you at the University of Arizona. I move that the committee forward to the full board for approval of the University of Arizona's institutional university metric targets. Is there a second?
Second.
There's a second. All those in favor, please say aye.
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 Any opposed? Any objections? The motion passes. Item number 6 on our agenda is Arizona State University's request to offer a 2-year academic program in military studies in conjunction with the United States Naval Community College. I believe Provost Gonzalez, you're prepared to present this item.
This should be brief. So ASU is seeking approval to offer a 2-year academic program in military studies. This 2-year program will result in an Associate of Arts degree that will be offered exclusively online in partnership with the United States Navy for enlisted sailors, Marines, and Coast Guards. The degree was designed in collaboration with the U.S. Navy in a new partnership that we described in a previous Academic Affairs Committee meeting that will support the Navy to build out a newly chartered U.S. Naval Community College. The plan is for ASU to offer this degree now, online only, by our College of Interdisciplinary Sciences and Arts. The Navy will eventually offer the degree themselves in the future. We are one of several partners in this build-out of their community college system. As an interdisciplinary degree, the AA in military studies draws from history, politics, global studies, interdisciplinary studies, and the causes and future of war. The United States Naval Community College will provide specific military content and expertise, and ASU will provide disciplinary and civilian framing and expertise. The Navy plans to launch this degree in fall 2022. And as we highlighted previously when we discussed this partnership, it will enable us to serve our educational access mission and our commitment to be of service to our communities. In this case, enlisted sailors, Marines, and Coast Guards, who will now have the opportunity to advance their education and future potential while serving their country. So details for the academic program are provided in the board book.
Thank you very much, Provost Gonzalez. I think all of us on the board appreciate the fact that ASU is working so closely with the U.S. Navy to produce this kind of educational opportunity for the sailors. Could you explain to us what happened or what has transpired from the previous discussion of this item to the point at which we're approving the new program?
Yes, happy to. Well, we originally had a degree in organizational leadership approved. And as we then went to the drawing board, and we did that because there's a timing issue. Obviously, we need approval on these things before we advance. As we then got into deeper planning with them, they became much more interested in the military studies degree, or being the first one that we launched. And so we've been actively going back and forth. So they're now requesting that this is the degree that we bring forward for approval.
Okay, thank you very much, Provost Gonzalez, for that explanation. Comments or questions from members of the board? President Crow.
Yes, I just wanted to add, for the benefit of newer regents in particular, that we have an expanding and evolving relationship with the Air Force, with the Navy, and now with the Space Force. We were just selected as one of their partner universities, and their entire command structure just visited us. And so in those relationships, we're the co-designers with them of new ways to upgrade the educational activity of all of the forces in one way or another, officers and enlisted. And the reason for saying this is that this is a project with the Navy in the context of a broader relationship with the Navy that ultimately will lead to other projects with the Navy and the upgrading of the Navy to the point where it is highly probable that as the Navy continues to evolve, for instance, on the new submarine force, everyone will have to be college educated to be able to operate the machine. The machine will be so complicated that, and so it's like a spaceship. And so everybody has, I could walk you through what they want us to do. And this is just a way in which this relationship is evolving. And then they say, can you help us do this? Yes, we can help you do this. Can you help us do this? Yes, we can help you do that. And with the Space Force folks that just came, the forces in the Space Force are referred to as guardians. They're called guardians, and so they need to take all the guardians up to levels of astronomy and astrophysics and astronautical engineering and so forth and so on. And so they're then coming to us, and we're working with them and we'll be working with them to help develop these kinds of things. So this is a project inside a program, inside a strategy, inside an evolving relationship for ASU with the military.
Perfect. Yes, Regent Mata.
Thank you. Thank you. So, Provost Gonzalez, the content, you mentioned about the content, so you're going to work with them with developing the content specifically for the Navy. Can this be expanded in the future also to have other military MOSs that can, military occupational specialties that can also be added, not necessarily just because it's Navy?
Yes, absolutely. And I think they're really approaching it more from a broad military framework, not necessarily Navy specific. But once these courses are in our portfolio, they're absolutely assets that we can use in other ways. And the core features of this degree, in fact, are not Navy specific. But the initial framing and some capstone involvement that they'll have at the end of the degree are where we pull in the Navy more closely.
Perfect, thank you.
Thanks, Regent Mata. Thanks, Provost Gonzalez. Other questions or comments? If not, I move that the committee forward to the full board for approval of the Arizona State University's request to offer a 2-year academic program. Is there a second?
Second.
There's a second. All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Any abstentions? The motion does pass. Item number 7 is a new academic program request from Northern Arizona University. And Provost Pugliese, if you'll present this item, please.
Thank you, Chair Penley. We're making a request today to add to our program portfolio a BSED in elementary education, learning, and pedagogy. This proposal is being put forward because we see 2 important opportunities with adding this program to our offerings through the College of Education. This first and foremost offers an opportunity for an elementary education path to prepare students for professional positions in education and related fields that don't require teacher certification. This includes growing areas of professional opportunity in curriculum development, instructional design, youth programming, academic support, and for parents who may be seeking to prepare themselves for homeschooling. At the same time, we've all witnessed the emerging great need for substitute teachers. That's another audience that may also pursue this. The program, as you can see in the materials that you have in your board materials, is founded on the psychology of learning, curriculum design, learning design, with a focus on literacy and fundamental academic skills. The second opportunity that this program plays into for us is that this program is a component of our international partnership with Shanghai Normal University, Tianhua College, and may draw international students to that are interested in U.S.-based education practices. And we'll be talking about that partnership in a subsequent request that you'll be hearing about a little bit later. We propose to launch this program in fall of '22 and expect to enroll 120 students by year 3 and 300 international students by year 3 through our partnership with Shanghai Normal University. And I'm happy to answer any questions.
Thank you very much, Provost. Any comments or questions? Regent Manson.
I just wanted to clarify that this program will be offered in Flagstaff and NAU domestically, whether or not the joint venture with the Chinese school goes through.
Correct, it will. And it will be offered initially online domestically, which is where we think we have the greatest audience for a program of this sort.
Okay, so this is not solely dependent upon
That's correct.
The Chinese students. Okay, thank you.
Regent Herbold.
This is really innovative, I think, and this is space that I suspect most people don't talk about, but the opportunity to lure in people who are doing a lot of homeschooling, doing a lot of curriculum work and the like, very creative. I really like this. I think that's hats off to you folks.
Thank you. All credit goes to our College of Education. Its leader, Dean Millott, and her faculty are the inspiration for this.
Okay.
Other comments, questions? If not, I move that the committee forward to the full board for approval in Northern Arizona University's request for a new academic program. Is there a second?
Second.
There is a second. All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Any abstentions? The motion does pass. Item 8 on our agenda is the new organizational unit request for Northern Arizona University. And Provost Pugliese, are you going to present that as well?
I sure am. Thank you.
Please do.
NAU is requesting your approval to establish the Northern Arizona University Institute for Public and Professional Ethics and Leadership. This institute will lead development of interdisciplinary, cross-institutional learning opportunities for students and faculty alike. It'll offer co-curricular programming, faculty development, and support design of curriculum focused on ethics in our major programs as well as in our general studies program. This institute is led by faculty from 3 areas within the university. Professor Yordi from our W.A. Franke College of Business, Professor Julie Peering, who's the chair of our Department of Philosophy, and Dean Gustafson, who's the dean of our Honors College. The Institute has high ambitions. They plan eventually to create an interdisciplinary minor in ethics. We're launching this new endeavor with a very generous philanthropic gift that gives us the resources to not only launch but run this initiative for a few years, and we are providing in-kind support for it and anticipate that this will attract additional philanthropic gifts that will allow us to sustain this initiative in the future. We see this as tying well into as I already mentioned, that there will be opportunities to use this institute to support development of curriculum related to our general studies program. We see this as also very important in relation to the strength of our professional programs across campus.
I think this is a really nice sounding program. I like the interdisciplinary nature of it very, very much. And I see it as a highly needed program. Comments from members of the board or questions?
I just want to say I'm thrilled to see the focus on civil discourse.
Other comments? If not, I move that the committee forward to the full board for approval. Yes, I'm sorry, Regent Duvall.
So sorry, the difficulty of being remote, but I just wanted to give sort of public acclaim to Richard Morrison's repetitive breadth, deep commitment to our universities. I mean, he has both in his personal commitment and his financial commitment at ASU, NAU, just an exemplary citizen, human being, educator. And I've had the honor of working with him a little bit on how he wanted this to be designed. And I just want to publicly thank him for the commitment that he continues to show to our higher education system in the state of Arizona, this just simply being the most recent manifestation of that.
I can only say hear, hear. Good comment, Regent Duvall, and absolutely on target. I move that the committee forward to the full board for approval Northern Arizona University's request for a new organizational unit. Is there a second?
Second.
There's a second. All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Any abstentions? The motion does pass. Item 9 is a request for Northern Arizona University to open a new academic location outside of Arizona in Shanghai. Provost Pugliese, will you please present that?
Thank you, Chair Penley. We request to open a new academic program in a new location in Shanghai at Shanghai Normal University in China. We've developed with our partners a plan and an agreement to create a 4+0 Sino-American Joint Institute, which will offer a joint or dual degrees through NAU and Shanghai Normal University, the Tianhua College. We'll start this partnership with a portfolio of 3 programs, and these programs include a BA in English, a Bachelor of Applied Science in Early Childhood Education, and the BSED that you just approved in Learning and Elementary Education, Learning and Pedagogy. This partnership builds out a portfolio of highly successful partnership programs that NAU has developed over many years with institutions in China, through which we offer a variety of blended programs some of this very sort where there are opportunities for students in China to simultaneously earn degrees from an institution in China as well as from NAU, others that have students combining learning experiences from an institution in China with curriculum that's offered here in the United States in Flagstaff. And in all cases, these are programs where we have our faculty offering a portion of the curriculum and the faculty in China at Shanghai Normal University offering a portion of the curriculum with our oversight, and they are, and our faculty will also, in this case, be traveling to Shanghai to teach part of this program in shorter term segments. And the Joint Institute has undergone pretty rigorous review with China's Ministry of Education. In fact, on the eve of Thanksgiving this last fall, several of us were on a late night Zoom call for a few hours, getting quite an interrogation from the Ministry of Education in China, which was quite the experience. Anyway, so that we have full approval on the Chinese side, in other words, so we're seeking your approval now. By year 4, we project that this partnership will yield an enrollment of 1,200 students per year, and it will generate a stream of net revenue over the period of the agreement. We project that by year 4, the net revenue return to NAU will be nearly $1 million. But maybe more importantly, the additional benefits to NAU are the international experiences that our faculty will have, the enhanced visibility of NAU in China, where we recruit a good number of our international students to programs here offered at our Flagstaff campus.
Thank you very much. As I think all of our regents know, NAU's efforts in China are similar to the kind of efforts that we've seen from the other 2 universities as well. Comments or questions about the proposal? Regent Manson.
I was just hoping that you could expand a little bit upon the type of arrangement. Is this a tuition sharing? Is this a pay per student? How guaranteed is the revenue coming from this program to NAU?
It's guaranteed to the extent that we have enrollment, and there are a lot of people in China and a lot of students at this university, and so there will be there's an agreement that specifies the transfer of tuition dollars to NAU, given the number of students that enter into this program.
So it's a dollar figure per enrolled student?
Correct.
I move that the committee forward to the full board for approval of Northern Arizona University's request to open a new academic location outside of Arizona. Is there a second?
Second.
There is a second. All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Those opposed, please say no. Any abstentions? Motion does pass. Item 10 is a new academic program request from the University of Arizona, and Associate Provost Heilerman will make the presentation.
Thank you, Henley. I just want to make sure Liesel's at a doctor's appointment with her son, and if she's available, if not, I'll go ahead and proceed.
Why don't you go ahead and proceed?
Thank you.
Please do, Greg. I am listening in, but it'd be great for you to grab it.
Okay, no problem. Happy to do that.
Perfect, Provost folks.
I hope everyone's doing good. Thank you, Regent Penley. The University of Arizona is proposing an MS in clinical research that will be offered through the College of Medicine, Phoenix. The program is intended for graduate and professional students, clinical residents, subspecialty clinical fellows, postdoctoral scholars, clinical coordinators, and early career faculty members that are associated with the College of Medicine, Phoenix. Students will be provided with broad knowledge and practice of clinical research by clinical faculty in the College of Medicine. The thesis projects associated with this program may be used to satisfy residency or subspecialty fellowship research theses that are in other programs, and then graduates of this program will fill a growing need for highly qualified clinical investigators who are adept at designing and conducting research that translates into better treatments and outcomes for patients throughout Arizona and beyond. I'd like to comment that the program review process includes rigorous review by the Office of Instruction and Assessment at the University of Arizona. However, we were notified by Chad ahead of the meeting that the concepts that we have on, as we transcribe them onto the form required by ABOR, read more like competencies. And this is something that we will fix ahead of the next meeting if that's agreeable with the committee. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Associate Provost Heilerman. For some time on this board, and board members who've been on this board for a while know my concerns about these program requests. I don't want to get involved in the details, but what I have asked are two things. Number one, that the universities present very clearly what the concepts to be learned are and what the competencies. My feeling is that the public and a prospective student needs to understand those quite clearly before making a decision to take on this program. And these are not difficult things to do. Secondly, I have maintained that we need to have good assessment methods. When ASU presented its program requests at the last meeting, I commented on the assessment efforts. Provost Gonzalez has replied with considerable effort to improve the quality of the assessment of the new programs at Arizona State University. Now, I can do two things with this. I can either delay consideration of this motion and let the University of Arizona both clarify its assessment methods as well as its concepts or competencies, or I can present the motion to you and vote no. So I prefer to delay it rather than vote no, but Regents, I'll look to you. Can I delay this or not? Then what I'm going to ask, if that's okay, I'm going to ask you, Associate Provost Heilerman, to work with Provost Folks in the academic unit to both clarify those concepts and competencies and also to work toward a better program of assessment than the one that you've presented at this point. Okay?
Absolutely. Thank you, Regent Penley.
Thank you very much. With that, I'm going to move on to item number 11, which is a request for credit exception for the University of Arizona. And are you going to present that as well, Associate Provost Heilerman? Or is Provost Folks going to present that?
Regent Penley, we asked that this one also be delayed. We'd like to further consider this one as well.
Okay, thank you very much. Item number 12 is the first-time student retention report. I'm going to turn to Chad, Andrew, and George on ABOR staff to present this item. And if you think we don't have enough time, we can delay that until another meeting, but we seem to have caught up a little bit. I'll turn to you, Andrew, since you're seated at the table.
We'll do it fast. I see George is on standby, so we'll cut to George.
Yes, hi, hello. Thank you, Regent Penley. Thank you, Chair Penley and Regents. I'll try to move through the retention report key findings as quickly as possible. If we could advance 2 slides. First, I'd like to note that the majority of first-time students are entering our institutions as full-time students. Advance the slide. The majority of full-time students enroll almost entirely on campus. Next slide. In the most recent period, full-time on-campus retention rates declined slightly, as might be expected, as this is the first retention report that includes the full effects of the pandemic. Next slide. Part-time student enrollment has become an increasing proportion of first-time students. Next slide. Part-time students differ in the program modality in which they enroll across our universities, with the majority of part-time students enrolling online at ASU and on campus at both NAU and U of A. Next slide. Likewise, with similar to full-time enrollment, the part-time on-campus retention rates, one of the enterprise goals, also saw declines in the most recent period, undoubtedly due to the difficulties posed by the COVID-19 pandemic. Next slide. Comparing full and part-time student retention rates, it's clear that full-time students have much higher retention rates. Next slide. That largely results from them having, on average, higher high school GPAs and therefore more likely to be adequately prepared for college level work. Next slide. Looking at all first-time students across credit hours and modality, we can see that resident students are retained at a higher rate. Next slide. Pell students are retained at a somewhat lower rate. Next slide. And perhaps surprisingly, given data we see in the post-secondary attainment report and the enrollment report, there is not a substantial difference between the retention rates for male and female students. Next slide. First-time student retention rates do vary across race and ethnicity. And with that, I'll conclude my remarks and defer to Dr. Comrie, who may have some additional summary comments.
Yeah, great. And if I could just have one more slide and we'll be done with the presentation. Thanks. I just got really 3 high-level take-home points from this report for the board. The first is that if you look back several years in this report and look at last year's report, you'll notice that retention trends are generally upwards at all 3 universities. But this is the first year that we can really see the obvious effects of the COVID pandemic. These are the students who started in fall of 2020 and then came back and were retained for their second year in the fall of 21, which was just last semester. So this is some of the freshest data that we have. And you can see in virtually every single graph there a dip because of the pandemic, as one might expect. That said, I think we really need to recognize the efforts of the universities for their efforts at sort of keeping the decreases remarkably small. There was a lot of student support efforts that each university invested in making sure that those numbers didn't slip. And in fact, the main full-time on-campus student rates all slipped less than 1% overall, which was remarkable. And then just so that we're clear, and George mentioned this with some of the graphs, that the pandemic impact was really largest among students with most financial need. And you can see this in some of the other components of the data as well. And I'll leave it there.
Thank you very much, Andrew. Thank you very much, George, for that presentation. In these data, there is an explanation of, or at least some data about ASU's full-time, part-time, online, first-time students, right?
Yes.
Have I got that? And I'm going to turn to Provost Gonzalez to comment on the data associated with those part-time, first-time online students.
I'd like to make a comment if I might.
Okay.
Right before
President
Provost
Crowe.
Gonzalez. And it goes to this, particularly for the newer regents. So the concept retention, the definition of the word retention is a federal policy. It is not consistent with the way that we're running our institutions. So if you're an ASU student, you start as a first-year student at the institution, and for whatever reason, you drop out because you have cancer, you do not take a certain number of full-time courses in the second semester for whatever reason, you are forever in the federal government system a college dropout. Even if you return in your sophomore year, you are a college dropout. And so in the data, the system, the whole idea of retention in the way that it's calculated assumes that you're running a highly tree-lined campus in Hanover, New Hampshire, and you have spent $65,000 for your tuition to go there, and you come from a private school in northern New England, and your chances of dropping out are, for any reason, are zero because it's just not going to happen. You'll ask for leave, you'll do this. Among Native American students at ASU, for instance, where there is a high non-retention rate, which is not realistically portraying actually their completion within the school. If the student leaves to drop out to go home for a family event, a negative family event, a death, or something related to a cultural part of their community life, they're a college dropout forever. There's no exception, there's no ways around the rules and so forth. Retention and graduation rates are locked in by a classic model of 4-year liberal arts colleges, period. There are other ways to calculate these things, and we look at these things also, but I just want to make sure that regents realize that these are not, whatever they are, and our numbers are getting better, and as we just heard, we're doing better than we were, and better than we were, and better than we were, but they don't even reflect what we're doing. They're not even realistic indicators of what's going on within the institution, because the system designed by the federal government is calculating it on the assumption that you will graduate from college in 8 semesters, that you will have no interruptions, you'll have no opportunity to take less than 12 to 15 hours in those 8 semesters, period. That's the only measure of a college graduate according to the government of the United States.
And that's the measure that is reflected in these slides?
Yes.
Correct. Yes.
So there's another thing, what's it called, voluntary, I forgot the acronym, but there's another way to measure your, who actually graduates. So-
Academic progress.
Yes, so so we haven't been able to break it, we can't break it, and why can't we break it? Because it's locked into financial aid, it's locked into Pell Grants, it's locked into the policies. Our 3 universities, which are very egalitarian, very large scale, very diverse, we're never going to do very well in these federal retention measurements because they're too locked into a fixed model. So the voluntary measurements where you measure who actually graduates in 6 years, we have students graduating in 6 years who took courses at the community college because they needed to take care of their mother for one of the semesters in the 6 years that they went to ASU. They're college dropouts. They are dropouts. Now, we get to list them as a graduate, but they're against our retention rate, and they do not count in our 6-year graduation rate. Our 6-year graduation rate is only students who have graduated who started as first-time, full-time freshmen, period. 4-year graduation rate is even more rigid. If you do not graduate at the end of the 8th semester with your diploma in your hand, you are a college dropout for any reason. We've had hundreds of students start companies, lower their credits to 6 credits for the semester, launch their startup company, graduate in 5 years, dropouts. And so I just want to alert the regents that we just need to be really, 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 really careful about this data.
Thanks, President Crow. Any other comments, Provost Gonzalez?
I think President Crow is highlighting the biggest issue, which is the utility of this particular indicator. And it doesn't capture all of how we would measure success for our online students.
Or on campus.
Or on campus, but particularly online, because we know that it's such a different population that's not necessarily even intending to have consecutive semesters or terms where they're enrolling. And in fact, one of the nice things about our online programs is it offers great flexibility, and that's in part why they're choosing this. We also know the average age of our online population is 29. They have jobs, they have kids, they have many other things that are pulling them. So to have a measure that really is a measure of who enrolled in fall 2023, who then enrolled again in fall 2020, from 22 to 23.
Not just enrolled with a full load.
Well, enrolled with, but also enrolled in the same term. So fall term A, often our students are enrolling in fall term B. They would be considered not retained because they took that one particular segment out. So I just think that we need to be cautious about how we're interpreting.
So to Provost Gonzalez's point, so we designed a 6 academic year, 2 fall A, fall B, spring A, spring B, summer A, summer B, so that students could pick and choose how they wanted to take courses. They could. So as the provost just said, if you come back for your 2nd year and in fall A you don't take a course, because you're taking all your courses in fall B in an accelerated way, drop out. Even though you have a full load, drop out. And we have no chance of changing it at the Washington level, no chance whatsoever. Because those tree-lined schools with those little towers and little, baubles on the top of them, where I've sent lots of money. They don't want things to be counted that way. So anyway, I'm not trying to.
No, but I think those are very useful comments.
Yeah.
Andrew, other comments about this particular issue?
I just
in the report?
back up what the last bits of discussion from President Crow and Provost Gonzalez, that be very clear on what the definitions mean in all of these statistics. That said, one of the reasons that we worry about the statistic for even the first time full-time on-campus students is that also the rankings, which we all love to hate, but they are the rankings, often put a lot of premium on that particular number. And it is flawed for all the reasons that you just heard. And yet it is the one that is widely available, so therefore it's widely used, which is why the universities worry about it a lot nonetheless. So I would say that's important. The other one is we tend to conflate graduation rates with retention rates, and certainly one builds towards the other. This particular report is about retention, which is, in fact, the students who largely began on Zoom in the fall of 2020 and didn't actually come onto campus until the fall of 21 in the last piece of data here. And that's a little different to graduation. You will get a report on graduation and completion later in the year.
Thank you very much, Andrew. Comments or questions from members of the board on this report?
Just very briefly, I think my only comment is that I think you all deserve kudos for the sustained retention in the environment that we have been in the last year and a half, 2 years. I think those were good numbers, particularly, obviously in the immersion area.
We just tied everyone to the building. Regent Dave was out there helping.
And to reinforce what Regent Hansen is saying, we've done so much better here than I think many states have done with these retention rates and the enrollment rates, recognizing that we always want to do a little better. But nonetheless, I think we have to pause and say, whatever you've done, President Crow, President Cruz-Rivera, President Robbins, it has worked to do better than we might have expected under the circumstances. We have two final reports, folks, that both deserve considerable time. The financial aid report, which I think deserves more time than we're able to give it today, I'm going to recommend that we delay. We need to look closely at that report. We need to look closely at the issue that we confront here in Arizona of how we fund scholarships and financial aid and the impact of that on the overall budget of the university because of the way we deal with that in this state. While we do have a new Promise program, it is still funded at a relatively, a low level compared to the need that we have out there. The governor has proposed in his budget increasing that, and I especially appreciate what Governor Ducey has done in proposing an increase. We need to do even more over the next few years as we look at that Promise program. So I'd like to delay that item. The other item that I'm going to ask that we delay as well is one that's dear to my heart. And it's dear to my heart because it focuses on the Teachers Academy. And as provosts know, I have asked the universities for more innovative programs that meet teachers in their workplace, that deliver for them the number of hours and the master's degrees that they're going to need to be able to teach dual enrollment courses. And the dual enrollment program is of considerable importance to raising attainment in the state of Arizona. And I know that were we to have more time, we could both hear what the provosts have already done to provide teachers with the number of hours that they're going to need to qualify to teach dual enrollment courses in the future, because those are the new requirements of our Higher Learning Commission, the regional accrediting body for the three universities. What I'd also like us to do when we get around to this item is to talk about other ideas that our provosts have, particularly from NAU and ASU, on how we can do even more of an innovative job of helping teachers to reach the minimum number of hours required. So if there's not an objection, I'd like to delay both of those items. Regent Herbold.
Being new, could someone define dual enrollment for me?
Sure. Dual enrollment courses, in high school, students can achieve college credit
AP.
two ways, through advanced placement tests or dual enrollment. In other words, they're enrolled in a high school course, let's say in calculus, that is also a college level course. They receive credit for a fourth math course, and if I'm misstating this, Provost, stop me. They receive that credit for their high school degree. They also receive, if it's designated by a university or usually a community college, the college credit. The extent to which we have advanced placement is primarily in wealthier schools in the state of Arizona. In poorer schools, more heavily enrolled by Hispanic, Native American, and African American students, we don't have nearly so many advanced placement courses. We often have dual enrollment courses. So if we're going to raise attainment and help kids to understand that they can go on to college, increasing those dual enrollment courses is very important. Representative Udall has a bill before the legislature that is focused on dual enrollment and increasing the number of dual enrollment courses. That's why, and with the Higher Learning Commission's requirement for certification to teach those, we need to look closely at those programs that particularly ASU and NAU have. And in order to give them proper time, I think we delay them. Is that okay? With that, we are adjourned.